In today's video, we're comparing the legendary Shure SM7B up against this budget microphone from Rode called the PodMic. Let's do it. Welcome back, folks. This is Shane. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe if you're into these type of videos. So just to give you a heads up on my signal chain, I'm running the Shure SM57 and the Rode PodMic through two SE Dynamites, which are then going into my Steinberg UR22 MK2. Now, both of these microphones fall at opposite ends of the price spectrum. The Rode PodMic is one of the most affordable. These come in at somewhere around 130 Australian dollars. These are $800. So there's a huge difference in their price. You can essentially buy 6 of these for the price of one of these. So that may be a deciding factor depending on your particular situation and whether you'll be podcasting on your own or with others. What I've seen online about the PodMic, there's a lot of people that don't seem to like the sound of it. I think it really sounds nice. Now, there's nothing wrong with the sound of the Shure, even though technically on paper, it doesn't have as much low end or as much top end as the PodMic. It still sounds fantastic. It's got that big chesty voice. I did a full review of this as well. I'll link it up in the cards if you missed it, and you can check that out. Now, in terms of the PodMic, this actually has a 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz frequency response, which I don't know if it does or not. It still sounds really great on the low end, but it doesn't just, maybe it just doesn't have a bump in the mids that this microphone has at the expense of a little bit of low end. Now, one thing I got to say about the Shure, and this could also be due to the windsock over the top of the diaphragm, is it has a really nice top end. So if you have a lot of sibilance in your voice, like a lot of top end frequency, then without question you should go for the Shure SM7B, because these microphones here are a lot brighter. You can of course change that with EQ, but if you're doing a live stream, for example, you'll need some sort of processing in the mix to bring that out, or if you're using OBS, you can tweak it that way as well. Now, if you've got a DBX286S, it's also a really great option for any of these microphones to make them sound even better. But I really like the sound of this. I think these microphones get a really hard time. These kind of sound really nice in my opinion. I think they sound great, but if you're not using them with some sort of inline preamp boosting the gain, you'll probably be dissatisfied with it. Now, don't think if you're thinking about buying one or the other of these, they're going to sound great if you don't have some sort of preamp system. So you definitely need an SE Dynamite or a Cloud Lifter or a FET head or a DBX286S to get the most out of both of these microphones. So they're both going to sound pretty average without actually running them through something that boosts the gain dramatically. Now, while on paper, the Shure SM7B has a frequency response of 75 Hz to 18 kHz, which is less than the 20 to 20 on the Rode PodMic. This feels like it has more of a chesty voice, whereas the PodMic sounds like it has more low end, but less of the chest frequency. It's weird. I think that's a lower mids thing. I can hear it in my headphones. It does sound really nice on the low end, but this just sounds like a far more premium microphone in my opinion. But I actually really like the high end on this microphone. You just get a little bit more, and that won't be for everybody, right? This is a much flatter sounding microphone, which also has a boost on the back to kind of bring it into the same ballpark as the Rode PodMic when it comes to the high end. So I'm going to switch that now, and you can hear the difference. What we're about to hear now is the difference between the Rode PodMic completely flat and the Shure SM7B with the treble boost enabled, or the presence boost as they call it. So this is extending the high-end frequencies, and now to my ear, I actually like this a little bit better, maybe because I've gotten used to the high end on the Rode PodMic, but with this windsock that's on the front of the microphone, and with my particular voice, this works really well. But I think most people leave that off for whatever reason. It just depends on the person using the microphone. But sometimes if there's too much of that sort of sibilance in the microphone through the voice and the way the frequency of the microphone is, it can become very, very distracting. It's always something you can change in post. But if you're doing a live stream, for example, you'll need something like a DBX286S or some sort of EQ to tailor that and to get rid of it before it hits the web. Whereas on this microphone, you can simply flick the switch and get less. So it's up to you which one you like the best. I'll flick it back. Now, in terms of the gain structure of both of these microphones, the thing that you'll notice is the Rode PodMic is easier to drive. You still need one of these inline preamps, as I mentioned a couple of times, but I have the gain on my Steinberg UR22 MK2 adjust between 10 and 11 o'clock, whereas on the Shure SM7B, I have it up at 1 o'clock. So yeah, not only do I need that extra 28 dB to run these microphones properly, but you also need to drive the preamp on the sound card still a little bit more than you do with the PodMic over here. I think the PodMic would suit people who are getting into it, who might need multiple microphones without sort of breaking the bank. And that's why I bought this as kind of like a third microphone. I was keen just to see how it was based on its price after being really blown away by the Rode Procasters. But I felt like the Rode PodMic gets a little bit too much of a hard time. Hearing it like this, back to back with the Shure SM7B, I'm pretty impressed with the sound. And you know what? It does pretty well with the Plosives as well. So what I'm going to do now is show you the proximity effect. You've been listening to it a bit, but I'm going to try and enhance that a little bit more now by talking right into the front of the microphone. And we can see how the Shure SM7B sounds with my voice lower, just giving it that big chesty sound. And now over to the Rode PodMic. One of the great things about this microphone is it handles the plosives pretty well, and it still has a nice proximity effect, even talking directly into the grill without changing the way that I'm talking. Of course, if you want to get rid of all the plosives, get a little windsock, and that will also help cut down on the high-end frequencies a little bit as well. So you might prefer that. If you're not doing a video podcast where the visuals matter, so to speak, I couldn't care less. If you want a better sound, get one of these. They're $3. Put that on, and it will not only tame the high end, but it will also stop any plosives from getting through. But you know what? One thing I've learned over the years that specs don't always tell the full story. When I compared the Procaster to the Shure SM7B, technically this has less tops and less low end, but it sounded far bassier than the Shure SM7B in my opinion. So specs don't always tell the full tale with everything tech related. So it's all about application. It's all about how your voice works with a particular piece of gear and what's most economical and affordable. So I'm going to give you my final thoughts about what I'm hearing with both of these mics. I think this is a very safe microphone. It just sounds really good. It doesn't do too much of the high end. It doesn't do too much of the low end. But if you get up close to it, you get a big chesty sound. And I kind of like that. I think it sounds great. Now, when you're talking about the Rode PodMic, can you use this in a professional sense? Absolutely. Look, it depends on how great your voice is and which one suits your voice better. If you're on a budget, there's probably no better deal than this one out there. There are some other microphones that are just typical sort of vocal microphones for live performing that sound great as well. But if you want the podcasting look, if you're going to be doing a video or whatever, this will give you that. And I think it sounds great. But I think a lot of the criticism from a lot of these microphones is the fact that people don't run these inline preamps. So if you're going to save up for any of these two microphones, put something like this in the budget as well, or a cloud lifter, wherever I put it right here. And yeah, it will drastically improve the audio quality of both of these microphones. It's an essential. Don't think your sound card's going to be doing a good job. What I'll do now, just to finish this video, I'll unplug the SE Dynamites and just plug directly into the sound cards, and you can see how they sound. What you're listening to now is the Shure SM7B. I can't hear myself in the headphones with the same gain structure, so I'm going to crank this up as loud as I can before it gets too noisy. And that's it. So I'm not going to do any post-processing right here, just so you can hear how that sounds. Now over to the PodMic. I can just hear myself, so this is an easier mic to drive. I'm just going to crank up the preamp. So if you don't plan on buying an SE Dynamite or a cloud lifter, I can get more signal out of the PodMic than I can with the SM7B. So keep that in mind if you're just, on a super tight budget, you want a microphone that's like this, but you don't want to invest, an extra couple of $100 or $100 into something like this. I get more signal out of this before I get noise. And yeah, actually, it doesn't sound too bad. So you can drive it, but I've got the preamp on 9 of 10, and not every sound card will sound good with the preamp on 9 out of 10. And that's with the same 9 out of 10 on the SM7B. I can just hear myself in the headphones, so it's very, very quiet. Thanks again for watching, folks. My name's Shane. If you want to find out about either of these two microphones, links will be in the description below. A massive thank you to my friend Mark for the loan of this epic Shure SM7B. And I have to give it back next week, so I figured I'd get as many videos done with it as possible. And you know what? Visually, it looks great. I encourage you to go check out the Shure SM7B versus this, and I'm currently still not going through the SE Dynamite, so hopefully you can hear me. I'll probably add some volume in post, but yeah, this is a really great contender. Go check the video out. Links will be up here somewhere. Thanks again. Catch you soon. Ooh, see ya.